Let me tell you something strange about the people who always seem to end up in the spotlight. You know the ones I'm talking about. The group project finishes, and somehow their name is the one the teacher says out loud. The big idea lands in a meeting, and they're the one talking the loudest when the boss walks by. You stay late, you fix the mess, you make things work, and when it's time to say good job, the credit slides right past you and lands neatly in their hands. Again, you feel that burn in your chest, that mix of anger and confusion. How is this happening again? How do they always take all the credit? And why does everyone let them? It's easy to write them off as selfish, arrogant, narcissistic, and sometimes that's true. But if you stop for a second, if you look beneath the surface ego, beneath the confident posture, there's a psychology there that's a lot more fragile and a lot more complicated than it looks. Because people who take all the credit aren't just hungry for praise, they're fighting a quiet war inside their own head. A war about worth, about visibility, about what it means to matter in a world that rarely claps for quiet effort. This is the psychology of people who take all the credit. See, most of us grow up learning some version of this rule. If you work hard, people will notice. If you do the right thing, it'll pay off. But here's the problem. Life doesn't always work like that. In school, the loud kid gets called on more than the right kid. In the office, the person with the best slide deck often gets more respect than the person with the best ideas. On social media, the person who says, "I'm grinding," gets more attention than the person who's actually grinding in silence. Some people look at this unfairness and think, that's messed up, but I'll keep doing my best. Others look at it and think, oh, so being seen matters more than being good. Got it. And that's where it starts. Credit becomes currency. Visibility becomes survival. And from that point on, they aren't just working, they're performing. For some people, taking credit is not just about ego, it's about fear. Fear of being overlooked, fear of being replaceable, fear of going back to a version of themselves that felt invisible, ignored, or powerless. Maybe they were that kid who did everything right and still got overshadowed by a louder sibling. Maybe they grew up in a home where praise was rare, but criticism was free. Maybe they were the quiet partner in a relationship or a friendship where someone else always stole the spotlight, and they promised themselves, never again. I will make sure people know I'm valuable, even if I have to shove my way into the narrative. So now, when something good happens, their instinct isn't, how do we share this? It's, if I don't claim this, I'll lose it. If I don't speak up first, I'll disappear. That's the first layer of the psychology. Credit taking as a survival reflex. But there's another layer. Psychologists talk about something called the self-serving bias. It's this quiet little mental trick we all do, where we take credit for success and blame external things for failure. We all do it to some degree. I passed the exam because I'm smart. I failed it because the questions were unfair. I got the promotion because I'm talented. I didn't get it because my boss is biased. For most people, this bias is there, but balanced. We still feel some guilt when we don't acknowledge others. We still feel a nudge to say, thank you, and we did this together. But for chronic credit takers, that self-serving bias is cranked up to maximum volume. In their mind, the story always sounds like this. I led the team. It was my idea. They helped, but I carried it, even when they didn't. Even when the truth is a lot messier and a lot more shared, their brain quietly edits the memory in their favor. They don't feel like they're stealing from you. They feel like they're claiming what was rightfully theirs. And then there's control. Taking credit gives people a sense of control over how they're seen. It's a kind of psychological armor. If they can shape the narrative first, I came up with this strategy. I handled that crisis. I pushed this project forward. Then they believe they can control how important, smart, or powerful they appear. It's like walking into a room and announcing your own legend before anyone else has the chance to speak. On the outside, it looks like confidence. On the inside, it's often insecurity, dressed up as control. Because truly secure people don't need to hoard credit. They don't need to repeat, "I did this 12 times. They know what they contributed, whether people clap or not. Credit takers often don't have that inner anchor. They rely on outer applause to keep their identity standing. But let's be honest, not every credit taker is deeply broken inside. Some are simply trained that way. They grew up, studied, or worked in environments where visibility was rewarded and teamwork was just a buzzword. In those environments, managers only praise whoever presents, not whoever built the slides. Teachers only grade the name they recognize, not the work they don't see. Companies promote whoever owns the room, not whoever does the actual heavy lifting. So what happens? People learn. They learn that being modest doesn't pay. They learn that saying "we" instead of "I" makes their contribution blur into the background. They learn that who gets the credit can change their salary, their title, their power. And once credit becomes a career strategy, instead of just a thank you, some people lean into it hard. But there's a darker side. Some people don't just take credit, they steal it. You know the type. They dismiss your idea when you say it quietly, then present the exact same idea loudly later, as if it came from them. They volunteer to communicate the team's work to leadership, and somehow your name disappears from the story. They say, "Oh yeah, I was already thinking that." Anytime you bring something new, this is no longer just insecurity or misunderstanding. This is ego mixed with entitlement. Underneath it, there's often a belief that they are more important than everyone else, that they deserve more recognition than others by default, that they are the main character, and everyone else is background. Psychologists might point to narcissistic traits here: grandiosity, lack of empathy, and a desperate need to feel special. To a narcissistic mind, your success doesn't feel neutral. It feels threatening. If you shine, they feel dimmer. If you get credit, they feel robbed. So they preempt that feeling by doing the robbing first. They play a zero-sum game with recognition. They believe either I get the praise or someone else does. And if someone else does, I lose. So they grab it, fast, relentlessly, even when they could have won alongside you. But not all credit takers are villains. Some are clueless. Seriously, there are people who grew up in families, cultures, or careers where talking about your achievements was normal, expected, even polite. They might say things like, "I led the project. I fixed that problem. I told them what to do," not realizing how it sounds to everyone else who was involved. To them, they're just reporting. To you, it feels like erasure. These people often genuinely don't realize how much they're overlooking others. Their mind is simply tuned to their own perspective. So when the boss asks, "Who handled this?" they're the first to answer because the question runs through their own experience. They don't stop to think, "Wait, we did this. I should mention them too." It's not malice. It's blind spots. But blind spots can still hurt. So we have different types of credit takers. The survivor, fueled by fear of invisibility. The strategist, trained by environments where only loudness gets rewarded. The narcissist, threatened by others' success, hoards recognition. The oblivious one, genuinely unaware of how much help they've had. The psychology behind each looks different, but the impact on you, pretty similar. You feel small. You feel robbed. You start questioning yourself. Did I really do that much? Am I overreacting? Maybe I should have spoken up more. Credit taking doesn't just rewrite the story on paper. It rewrites the story in your head. Here's something we don't talk about enough. When someone constantly takes credit in front of you, a quiet form of psychological damage starts to build. You begin to second-guess your contribution. Stay silent, even when you have ideas. Stop trying as hard because what's the point? This is where credit taking becomes more than rude behavior. It becomes gaslighting by omission. The story of who did what gets rewritten over and over until even you don't fully trust your own memory of the effort you put in. And if this happens in families, friendships, or long-term relationships, it can seriously affect your self-esteem. Imagine growing up with a sibling or parent who always took credit for your ideas, your efforts, your moments. They're praised as the responsible one, the smart one, the gifted one, while you're the one quietly doing the dishes, fixing the mistakes, and carrying the weight behind the scenes. Over time, you might start shrinking yourself automatically. You might learn to expect that credit will bypass you. You might even feel guilty for wanting recognition. That's how deep this goes. Credit isn't just about praise, it's about identity. But here's something powerful. Once you understand the psychology of credit takers, they become less intimidating because you start to see what's behind the performance. That boss who always grabs credit for the team's work, half the time, they're terrified of seeming irrelevant to their own boss. That friend who always one-ups your stories and makes your achievements sound smaller, they might be living with a constant fear that they're not enough on their own. That classmate who keeps presenting your ideas as theirs, they might believe deep down that they have nothing original to offer, and they're clinging to your creativity like a life raft. Understanding this doesn't excuse what they do, but it gives you a strange kind of freedom, because now you know their need to take credit says more about their wounds than your worth. Still, let's be real. You can understand someone and still need to protect yourself from them. So what do you do when you're surrounded by people who take all the credit? You don't have to turn into them. You don't have to start grabbing, shouting, and exaggerating your role just to compete. But you do have to stop leaving your contribution completely undefended. That starts with receipts. No, not petty screenshots. Real, practical, quiet proof. Save your drafts, notes, and emails that show you initiated or built something. Make sure your name is on shared documents. Speak up early in the process. I'll draft the first version and share it with everyone. You're not being ego-driven. You're making your contribution visible enough that it can't be casually erased. Then there's language. Instead of sitting silently while a credit taker rewrites the story, you can calmly add your version. Yeah, when I first suggested that last week, I wasn't sure how it would land, but I'm glad it worked. It said, I appreciate the shout out. It really was a team effort. Alex did a lot of the heavy lifting on the data side, and I handled the strategy piece. Notice what's happening there. You're not attacking. You're not begging. You're simply narrating the truth out loud. Credit takers thrive in silence. They thrive in spaces where no one corrects the narrative. The moment someone calmly, consistently speaks the real story, the game changes. But here's the part most people miss. You also have to examine your own relationship with credit, because sometimes the reason credit takers bother us so deeply is that we've never given ourselves permission to value our own work. Think about it. If you secretly believe your efforts don't matter, then when someone takes credit, it confirms your fear. If you believe your ideas are nothing special, you're more likely to let them be taken. If you've been trained to think that wanting recognition is selfish or arrogant, You'll stay quiet while someone else turns your contribution into their spotlight. So ask yourself, why does it feel uncomfortable to say, "I did this"? Who taught you that being proud is the same as being arrogant? When did you first learn that it's safer to be unseen than to risk being called attention-seeking? There's a psychology behind not taking credit, too. And sometimes it collides perfectly with the psychology of people who take all of it. One person afraid to claim their work, one person afraid not to. And the result? A story where only one name is remembered. But let's flip the perspective for a moment. Instead of only asking, why do they take all the credit? Ask this: what does taking credit cost them? Because there is a cost. On the surface, they might seem to be winning, getting promoted faster, praised more, trusted more. But underneath, something slowly erodes. When you constantly hog the spotlight, you lose trust. People start helping you less. They give you less of their best ideas because they know you'll repurpose them. Depth in relationships. If people feel used instead of seen, connections stay shallow. Self-awareness. When you're always curating an image of being the hero, you rarely sit with your own flaws. They get applause, yes, but it's often hollow. They don't know who would still be there if they stopped performing. They confuse being admired with being loved. They chase credit and often end up alone at the top of a mountain built from everyone else's efforts. That's not power, that's isolation. And here's the irony: the most magnetic, inspiring people you've met probably don't take all the credit. Think about the leaders, teachers, or friends you actually respect. They say things like, "I couldn't have done this without my team. It was Sarah's idea originally. They did most of the heavy lifting, I just helped shape it." Giving credit doesn't make them smaller. It makes them bigger. Why? Because people who share credit signal something rare. They're secure. They know that recognizing someone else's light doesn't dim their own. They know that greatness isn't fragile. They know that real power is not in being the only one praised, but in being the one who lifts everyone up. And that's the ultimate twist in this psychology. People who cling to all the credit are usually the ones least certain of their own worth. People who give it away are often the ones most grounded in theirs. So where does this leave you? If you're someone who's been hurt by credit takers, someone who's been overlooked, sidelined, or written out of your own story, there are two truths you need to hold at the same time. You deserve recognition. Your effort, your ideas, your late nights, they matter. It is not selfish to want your contribution acknowledged. Your worth can't depend on recognition, because some rooms will never clap for you the way you deserve. Some people will never give you the credit you've earned. If your entire sense of value hangs on their applause, you'll always be at their mercy. It's a paradox. You fight for your credit in the world, while also building a version of yourself that knows who you are without it. You learn how to say, "I did that," out loud, while also knowing, even if no one ever says my name, what I did still matters. And if you're listening to this and realizing, I kind of am that person who takes more credit than I should, this is not a condemnation. It's an invitation. Ask yourself, what am I afraid would happen if I started sharing credit honestly? Who taught me that if I'm not the star, I'm nothing? When did I start believing that the only way to be safe was to be seen as the hero? You don't have to keep living like that. You don't have to keep draining the room just to feel full for a moment. Try this instead. Next time something goes well, and your instinct is to say, "I did this," pause and say, "We did this." Name the people who helped. Highlight someone who usually goes unnoticed. Offer the spotlight to someone else and watch what happens to the room. You might notice something surprising. You don't disappear. You don't shrink. You expand, because now people aren't just seeing your results. They're seeing your character. The psychology of people who take all the credit is not just about them. It's a mirror held up to all of us. In a world obsessed with personal brands, main character energy, and constant self-promotion, we're all being pulled toward one central question. Do I want to be seen as impressive, or do I want to be genuinely impactful? Credit is about impressions. Impact is about reality. Credit says, look at what I did. Impact says, look at what changed because we did this. One is loud, one is deep, and the people who truly change things, in families, in workplaces, in communities, are rarely the ones hoarding every compliment. They're the ones who aren't afraid to share the stage, because they know their worth isn't on the line every time someone else shines. So the next time someone takes all the credit for something you helped build, remember this. It's not proof that you're small, it's proof that they're scared. Scared of being unseen, scared of being ordinary, scared that without constant praise, they might have to sit with who they really are. You don't have to live like that. You can choose a different psychology. You can be the kind of person who keeps track of your own contributions, who respects your own effort, who calmly speaks the truth when someone tries to rewrite the story. And at the same time, you can be the kind of person who sees others, who says, "Thank you, you helped me. I couldn't have done this alone." Because in the end, the most powerful people in any room are not the ones grabbing credit, but the ones whose impact is so obvious, so consistent, and so real that even when someone else tries to take the spotlight, everyone else in the room already knows the truth. And deep down, so do you. You don't need to steal credit. You just need to stop abandoning it. And if enough of us start doing that, standing in our effort without shrinking, sharing recognition without fear, we create a different kind of culture, one where credit is not a weapon or a currency to hoard, but something passed around like light. Not, look at me, but look at what we made together. And that's the kind of psychology that doesn't just go viral online. It heals people in real life.